She flirted with a grieving widower, and it was the best mistake of her life. Officer Maya Hart thought she was just making a harmless joke when she pulled over the speeding sedan that rainy night. The man behind the wheel wore a wedding ring, so she laughed and said if he weren't married, she'd slip her number onto the ticket. What she didn't know was that his wife had been dead for 2 years, and he still wore that ring because taking it off felt like forgetting her. One careless comment, one broken man, one little boy in the back seat who hadn't smiled in months. This is the story of how a traffic stop became a love story. If you want to see how far this story travels, drop your city in the comments below, hit that like button, and stay with me until the very end. The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight, the kind of relentless downpour that turned the streets of Millbrook into rivers of reflected light. Officer Maya Hart sat in her patrol car at the edge of Riverside Drive, watching the windshield wipers fight a losing battle against the water streaming down the glass. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she kept sipping it anyway, more out of habit than any desire for the bitter taste it left on her tongue. It was supposed to be a quiet Tuesday night, the kind of shift where nothing happened, where she'd write a few parking violations and spend most of her time thinking about whether she should finally adopt that rescue dog she'd been eyeing at the shelter. Instead, the radio had been crackling with minor accidents all evening, fender benders, hydroplaning incidents, the usual chaos that rain brought to drivers who forgot how to handle wet roads. Maya glanced at the clock on her dashboard. Another 4 hours until her shift ended. Another 4 hours of sitting in this car, watching the rain fall, wondering if this was really what she'd imagined when she joined the force 8 years ago. Her thoughts were interrupted by a flash of silver cutting through the downpour. A sedan, moving too fast, its headlights slicing through the darkness like desperate beacons. Maya's hand moved to the ignition before her brain fully registered what she was doing. Instinct. Training. The car was doing at least 50 in a 35 zone, and in this weather that was asking for disaster. She pulled out behind the sedan, her lights flashing blue and red against the wet pavement. For a moment, the car didn't slow down, and Maya felt that familiar tension in her chest, the one that came with not knowing what was on the other side of a traffic stop. Then the sedan's brake lights flared, and it pulled carefully to the shoulder, its tires sending up sprays of water as it came to a stop. Maya grabbed her flashlight and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit her immediately, seeping through her uniform jacket and plastering her dark hair to her forehead within seconds. She approached the driver's side window, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The window rolled down, and she found herself looking at a man who appeared to be in his mid-30s, with tired eyes and a jaw that hadn't seen a razor in at least a couple of days. His hair was disheveled, his knuckles white where they gripped the steering wheel. But what caught Maya's attention first was the way his hands were shaking, not from cold, but from something else entirely. "License and registration, please," she said, her voice steady despite the rain running down her face. "Officer, I'm sorry, I know I was speeding, but—" "License and registration," Maya repeated, but her tone softened slightly. There was something in his voice, a rawness, that didn't match the profile of a typical speeder. The man reached for his glove compartment, and that's when Maya noticed two things simultaneously. First, there was a small figure in the back seat. A child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, huddled under a blanket that looked like it had been hastily thrown over him. Second, there was a wedding ring on the man's left hand, a simple gold band that caught the beam of her flashlight and threw it back at her. The man handed over his documents with trembling fingers. Ethan Brooks, according to his license. 34 years old. The address listed was just a few blocks away, in one of the older neighborhoods where the houses had big porches and the trees had been growing for decades. "Mr. Brooks," Maya said, glancing at the paperwork before looking back at him, "you were doing 50 in a 35 zone. In this weather, that's not just dangerous. It's potentially deadly." "I know." His voice cracked on the words. "I know, and I'm sorry. My son, Caleb, he's got a doctor's appointment. We're already late, and I wasn't thinking." Maya looked at the back seat again. The child, Caleb, was watching her with wide eyes that held something she recognized. Fear, yes, but also a wariness that seemed too old for his young face. He was clutching a worn stuffed elephant to his chest like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. A doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock at night? Maya asked, though her tone had lost its official edge. It's a specialist, Ethan said. The only time she could fit us in. Caleb's been having trouble sleeping, nightmares. She's the best in the area for pediatric. He trailed off, shaking his head. Look, I know that's not an excuse. I should have left earlier. I should have planned better. I'm just... Hey. Maya held up a hand, stopping him. Take a breath, Mr. Brooks. She looked at the wedding ring again, and something shifted in her chest. The man was clearly at the end of his rope, running on empty and still trying to hold it together for his kid. She knew that look. She'd seen it on her mother's face more times than she could count lately, and maybe it was the rain, or the late hour, or the weight of her own exhaustion, but Maya found herself saying something she immediately wished she could take back. You know, she said, attempting a light tone that fell completely flat, if you weren't married, I might have slipped my number onto this ticket instead of a fine. The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Maya saw it, the way Ethan's face crumpled, the way his hand instinctively moved to touch the ring on his finger, the way his eyes went somewhere far away and infinitely painful. I'm not, he said quietly. Married, I mean. Not anymore. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Maya had ever heard. My wife died 2 years ago, Ethan continued, his voice barely above a whisper. I still wear the ring because... He stopped, swallowed hard. Because I don't know how to stop. Maya felt the words hit her like a physical blow. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. What could she possibly say? She'd just made a joke about flirting with a man who was still grieving his dead wife, in front of his child, in the rain, on the side of the road. If there was a handbook for exactly the wrong thing to say, she'd just written the definitive chapter. Mr. Brooks, she managed finally, I am so sorry. That was completely inappropriate of me. I had no idea, and that's no excuse, but I never should have. It's okay. The way he said it made it clear that it wasn't, but that he was too tired to be angry about it. You couldn't have known. But Maya couldn't let it go that easily. She looked at the back seat again, at little Caleb with his 2 old eyes and his stuffed elephant, and she felt something break inside her. This wasn't just a traffic stop anymore. This was a family held together by nothing but sheer willpower, and she'd just kicked them when they were already down. Listen, she said, making a decision she hoped she wouldn't regret. I'm going to let you off with a warning tonight. Just... Please slow down. The roads are dangerous, and that little boy back there needs you to get him where he's going safely. Ethan stared at her for a long moment, and Maya could see the questions forming behind his eyes. Why the sudden change? Was this pity? Did she feel guilty? All of the above, probably, but Maya didn't care what he thought her motivations were. She just wanted this moment to be over so she could crawl back into her patrol car and hate herself in peace. Thank you, Ethan said finally. Thank you. Maya nodded curtly, already stepping back from the window. Get your son to his appointment, Mr. Brooks. And please, drive safely. She turned and walked back to her cruiser, the rain plastering her uniform to her skin. By the time she slid behind the wheel, the silver sedan was pulling carefully back onto the road, its taillights disappearing into the downpour like dying stars. Maya sat there for a long time, staring at the spot where the car had been. The coffee in her cup had gone from cold to frigid, but she didn't notice. All she could think about was the look on Ethan Brooks' face when he'd touched that wedding ring, the way his voice had cracked when he'd said his wife was dead, the way his son had watched her with eyes that had already seen too much loss. Nice work, Hart, she muttered to herself. Real smooth. She reached for the radio, then stopped. What was she going to report? That she'd made an inappropriate comment to a grieving widower? That she'd let him off with a warning because she felt bad about being an idiot? No. Better to just let this one go. Better to pretend it never happened and hope she never ran into Ethan Brooks again. But life, Maya was about to learn, had a way of ignoring what she hoped for. The next 3 days passed in a blur of routine that felt anything but comforting. Maya worked her shifts, answered calls, wrote tickets, and tried not to think about the man with the wedding ring and the sad eyes. She failed spectacularly. At home, things weren't much better. Her apartment felt emptier than usual, the silence pressing in on her from all sides. She'd call her mother every evening, listening to updates about her father's condition that never seemed to get better and often got worse. "He didn't recognize me for an hour today," her mother said on Thursday night, her voice carrying that particular exhaustion that comes from watching someone you love disappear piece by piece. Then suddenly he was back, asking if I'd fed the cat. "We haven't had a cat in 15 years, Maya." "I know, Mom. I don't know how much longer I can do this." Maya closed her eyes, pressing her phone against her ear, like she could somehow transmit strength through the connection. "I'll come by this weekend, help out, give you a break." "You work weekends." "I'll switch shifts." A pause. Then, "You're a good daughter, Maya. I don't tell you that enough." "You tell me plenty, Mom. Get some sleep, okay?" After she hung up, Maya sat on her couch and stared at the ceiling. Her father had been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's 3 years ago, just after her 32nd birthday. Watching the man who had taught her to ride a bike, who had cheered at every softball game, who had pinned the badge on her chest at her academy graduation, watching him slowly forget all of it was a particular kind of torture that never got easier. She thought about Ethan Brooks again, about losing someone all at once versus losing them slowly. She wasn't sure which was worse. Maybe loss was just loss, and comparing it was pointless. On Friday afternoon, Maya found herself at Scoops, the ice cream shop on Main Street that had been a Millbrook institution for as long as anyone could remember. She was off duty, dressed in jeans and a light sweater, her hair down for once instead of pulled back in its regulation bun. All she wanted was a cone of mint chocolate chip and 30 minutes of not thinking about anything serious. The shop was crowded, as it always was on warm afternoons. Families with strollers, teenagers on dates, elderly couples sharing Sundays like they'd been doing for 50 years. Maya got in line behind a woman with 3 kids who were arguing loudly about whether chocolate or vanilla was superior. She smiled despite herself. Some debates were eternal. She was so focused on the menu board that she almost didn't notice him. Ethan Brooks was standing at the counter, his hand resting on the shoulder of a small boy who was pressing his nose against the glass display case with an intensity that suggested the fate of the world depended on his ice cream choice. The boy was wearing a dinosaur t-shirt and sneakers that lit up when he walked, and his hair was sticking up in about 14 different directions. Caleb. That was his name. Maya remembered it from the traffic stop. For a moment, she considered turning around and walking out. This was awkward, wasn't it? She'd made that stupid joke. She'd found out his wife was dead. She'd let him go with a warning out of guilt. What were they supposed to say to each other now? "Hey, remember when I accidentally made a pass at a widower? Good times." But before she could make her escape, Caleb turned around and looked directly at her. "Daddy," he said, tugging on Ethan's sleeve. "Daddy, it's the police lady." Ethan turned, and for a second, Maya saw him stiffen with the same instinct she'd felt, the desire to avoid an uncomfortable encounter. Then something shifted in his expression, and he offered her a small, tired smile. "Officer Hart," he said, "or should I say Maya?" He gestured at her civilian clothes. "You look different without the uniform." "I get that a lot." Maya stepped out of line, walking over to them. "I'm less intimidating without the badge, apparently." "I don't know about that." Ethan's smile gained a fraction more warmth. "You're still pretty intimidating." Caleb was staring up at her with those 2 old eyes, and Maya felt herself soften despite her discomfort. She crouched down to his level, ignoring the way her knees protested the movement. "Hey there, Caleb," she said. "Remember me?" The boy nodded slowly. "You stopped our car when it was raining." "That's right. I'm sorry if I scared you that night." Caleb considered this for a moment. "You didn't scare me, but you made my daddy sad." The words hit Maya like a punch to the gut. She heard Ethan make a soft sound above her. Embarrassment, maybe, or resigned acceptance that children always said the exact thing you hoped they wouldn't. "Caleb," Ethan said quietly, "that's not—" "No, he's right." Maya stood up, meeting Ethan's eyes. "I did. And I'm really sorry about that. What I said that night was thoughtless, and I've been feeling terrible about it ever since." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable passing across his face. Then he shook his head slightly. "You didn't know," he said. "How could you? I'm a guy with a wedding ring driving too fast in the rain. You made a joke. It happens." Still, it was wrong of me. Maybe. Ethan shrugged one shoulder. But if we're being honest, that was the first time anyone's flirted with me since Sarah died. Even if it was an accident, even if you felt bad about it afterward, it was human. Do you know how long it's been since someone treated me like a regular guy instead of a walking tragedy? Maya didn't know what to say to that. She looked at Caleb, who had gone back to studying the ice cream display with academic concentration. "I want the blue one," he announced, "with the sprinkles." "The blue one is cotton candy flavor," Ethan said. "Are you sure? You didn't like it last time." "I'm sure." Caleb's voice carried the absolute certainty that only children can muster. Ethan sighed the sigh of a parent who had long since learned to pick his battles. "Okay, buddy, one cotton candy with sprinkles." He looked at Maya. "Can I buy you a cone? Consider it a thank you for the warning instead of the ticket." Maya started to refuse. This was already weird enough without adding ice cream to the equation. But something in Ethan's expression stopped her. He wasn't just being polite. He was reaching out, in his own awkward way, trying to transform an uncomfortable memory into something lighter. "Sure," she heard herself say. "Mint chocolate chip, 1 scoop." They ordered, paid, and found a small table near the window. Caleb sat between them, attacking his blue ice cream cone with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested he'd already forgotten his previous dislike for the flavor. Maya watched him for a moment, struck by how quickly children could bounce between emotions. "So," Ethan said, breaking the silence, "do you live around here? I don't remember seeing you before that night. I work the evening shifts mostly, but yeah, I'm about 10 minutes away. Small apartment over on Birch Street." "Birch Street. Nice area." "It's quiet." Maya took a bite of her ice cream. "Which is pretty much all I ask for after a day of sirens and radios." Ethan nodded, understanding without needing elaboration. "I'm a graphic designer, work from home mostly, very few sirens involved." "Must be nice." "It has its perks. Also its challenges." He glanced at Caleb. "Hard to meet deadlines when someone needs help with homework or has a bad dream at 3 a.m. There it was again, that raw honesty that had caught Maya off guard the first time she'd met him. Ethan Brooks didn't seem to have filters. He said what he was thinking, what he was feeling, without worrying about whether it made him look weak or overwhelmed. "How did the appointment go?" Maya asked. "The night I stopped you. The specialist." Ethan's expression flickered. "She said Caleb's nightmares are normal for kids who've experienced significant loss. Time, patience, and consistency. That's the prescription." "That sounds vague." "Extremely." Ethan smiled wryly. "But I've learned that there's not a lot of concrete answers when it comes to grief. You just kind of muddle through and hope you're not screwing everything up." Maya thought about her father, about the support group her mother attended every Tuesday, about all the time she'd Googled how to help parent with Alzheimer's and found nothing but contradictory advice. "Yeah," she said, "I know what you mean." Something in her tone must have given her away, because Ethan's eyes sharpened slightly. But he didn't push. Instead, he just nodded, a silent acknowledgement that everyone was carrying something heavy. "Daddy," Caleb interrupted, "my ice cream is melting." Ethan grabbed a napkin and started damage control on the blue rivers running down his son's arm. Maya watched the practiced efficiency of his movements, the way he managed to clean up the mess while simultaneously carrying on a conversation, and felt an unfamiliar pang in her chest. "You're good at that," she said. "Practice." Ethan grinned. "Lots and lots of practice. Sarah used to say I had a PhD in disaster management." The mention of his wife's name hung in the air, but it didn't carry the same weight it had that rainy night. Ethan said it like she was still part of his life, which Maya supposed she was. Death didn't erase people. It just changed their presence. "Caleb," Maya said, "what's your elephant's name, the one you had in the car?" Caleb looked up from his ice cream, surprised that she remembered. "Mr. Trunk. Mommy gave him to me when I was a baby." "Mr. Trunk is a great name." "He's very brave," Caleb added seriously. "He protects me when I have bad dreams." "That's good. Everyone needs a protector." Caleb studied her for a moment, his head tilted to the side. "Do you have one? A protector?" The question caught Maya off guard. She thought about it, really thought about it, and came up empty. I guess I'm supposed to be the protector, she said finally. That's kind of my job. But who protects you? Out of the mouths of babes, Maya thought. That's a really good question, Caleb. She could protect herself, Ethan said quietly. She carries a badge and a gun. That's pretty good protection. But it's not the same, Caleb insisted. Mr. Trunk doesn't have a gun. He just loves me. Maya felt something shift in her chest, a tectonic movement so small she almost missed it. She looked at Ethan, who was looking at his son with an expression of profound tenderness mixed with something that might have been helplessness. No, Maya agreed. It's not the same. The ice cream was finished. The conversation had reached a natural pause. They should go their separate ways now, back to their separate lives, their separate griefs, their separate struggles to keep it all together. That was the sensible thing to do. Instead, Maya found herself reaching into her pocket. Here, she said, pulling out a business card. This has my personal number on the back, in case you ever need anything, someone to talk to, emergency contact for Caleb's school, whatever. Ethan looked at the card like she'd handed him something both dangerous and precious. Are you sure? No, Maya admitted, but I've learned that being sure isn't really a prerequisite for doing things. Sometimes you just have to go with your gut. Ethan took the card, turning it over in his fingers. His eyes found the number she'd written on the back, and a small smile crossed his face. So this is you intentionally giving me your number, he said. Not accidentally. Intentionally, Maya confirmed. 100% on purpose. Even knowing everything you know. Especially knowing everything I know. Caleb had climbed down from his chair and was tugging on his father's hand. Daddy, can we go to the park now? You promised. Ethan stood, sliding the card into his wallet with deliberate care. I did promise, he said. He looked at Maya, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Thank you. For the warning that night, for this, for treating Caleb like a normal kid instead of a tragedy, Maya offered. Yeah, that. He's not a tragedy. He's an 8-year-old who likes dinosaurs and blue ice cream and has an elephant named Mr. Trunk. That's not sad. That's just life. Ethan's smile reached his eyes for the first time since she'd met him. I might call you, he said, just so you know. I'm counting on it. She watched them leave, Caleb chattering about the park as his sneakers flashed with each step. Ethan looked back once, through the window, and raised his hand in a small wave. Maya waved back. Then she sat alone at the table, staring at her empty ice cream cup, and wondered what the hell she'd just done. He texted her 3 days later. This is Ethan. From the ice cream shop, and the traffic stop, and the terrible first impression. Maya was sitting in her patrol car, parked outside the library, when the message came through. She smiled before she could stop herself. I remember you. Hard to forget someone whose kid asked if I have a protector. Caleb has a gift for cutting right to the heart of things. It's terrifying. It's also kind of wonderful. A pause. Then, he asked about you this morning, wanted to know if the nice police lady would come to the park sometime. Maya's heart did something complicated in her chest. Would his dad be okay with that? His dad thinks that would be great. And just like that, the door cracked open. Over the next few weeks, they fell into something that wasn't quite dating and wasn't quite friendship. It was something in between, a cautious dance of two people who both had reasons to be careful. They met at parks while Caleb played on the swings. They got coffee while Caleb was at school. They texted late at night, after Caleb was in bed, sharing the thoughts that only came out in the quiet hours. Maya learned that Ethan's wife, Sarah, had died in a car accident. A drunk driver, a rainy night not unlike the one where Maya had pulled him over. She learned that Ethan blamed himself for not being with her, even though there was nothing he could have done. She learned that he'd moved to Millbrook to start over, to give Caleb a fresh start, to escape the pitying looks and the "I'm so sorry for your loss" that had become the soundtrack of their lives. Ethan learned about Maya's father, about the Alzheimer's that was slowly stealing him away, about her mother's exhaustion and her own guilt for not doing more. about the way she threw herself into work because it was easier than sitting with the grief of watching her father disappear. "We're quite a pair," Ethan said one evening, sitting on a park bench while Caleb chased pigeons across the grass. "Both of us running from something. I prefer to think of it as walking briskly in the opposite direction." He laughed, a real laugh, full and warm, and Maya realized she'd never heard him laugh like that before. The sound of it made something loosen in her chest, something she hadn't even known was tight. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Depends on what it is." "Why did you give me your number? At the ice cream shop. You could have just walked away." "Probably should have, actually, but you didn't." Maya considered the question, turning it over in her mind. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. There was just something about you, about Caleb, something that made me want to know what happened next. And now that you know, now I want to know what happens after that." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and took her hand, tentatively, like he wasn't sure if the gesture would be welcome. Maya didn't pull away. "I haven't held anyone's hand since Sarah," he said quietly. "I didn't think I'd ever want to again. And now? Now I think maybe I was wrong." They sat like that for a long time, watching Caleb chase pigeons in the golden light of late afternoon. Maya's radio crackled occasionally with distant chatter, but for once she didn't feel the need to respond. For once, she was exactly where she needed to be. That night, Ethan invited her over for dinner for the first time. It was nothing fancy, spaghetti and meatballs, because that was Caleb's favorite, with garlic bread from a tube and salad from a bag. But sitting at their kitchen table, watching Ethan navigate the chaos of an 8-year-old who had strong opinions about Parmesan cheese, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. She felt like she might belong somewhere. "Miss Maya," Caleb said, his mouth full of spaghetti, "do you want to see my room after dinner?" "Caleb, chew your food," Ethan said automatically. "I would love to see your room," Maya said. Caleb's face lit up. "I have dinosaur posters and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, and Mr. Trunk has his own bed next to mine." "That sounds amazing." After dinner, Caleb gave her the grand tour. His room was exactly what she'd expected. Messy in the way of all children's rooms, with Legos scattered across the floor and books piled haphazardly on the shelves. The dinosaur posters were impressive. The glow-in-the-dark stars were strategically placed, and Mr. Trunk did indeed have his own small bed, complete with a tiny blanket. But what caught Maya's attention was the photo on the nightstand. A woman with brown hair and a wide smile, holding a much younger Caleb on her lap. "Sarah." "That's my mommy," Caleb said, following her gaze. "She's in heaven now." Maya crouched down to his level. "She's very beautiful. Daddy says I have her eyes." Maya looked, really looked, and saw that it was true. Those two old eyes that had struck her the first night weren't just old. They were Sarah's eyes, carrying her forward into a world she'd left too soon. "He's right," Maya said. "You do." "Do you think she'd like you?" Caleb asked. "I think she would. Daddy seems happier when you're around." Maya didn't know how to answer that. She didn't know if she had the right to an opinion about a woman she'd never met, whose husband and son she was slowly becoming attached to. But Caleb was looking at her with that particular intensity children have when they ask questions they actually need answered. "I hope so," Maya said finally. "I hope she'd be happy that you and your daddy aren't alone anymore." Caleb considered this. "I don't think she liked us being sad," he said. "She used to tickle me when I was sad. Until I laughed. That sounds like a good mommy." "She was the best mommy." Caleb picked up Mr. Trunk and hugged him tight. "But she's not here anymore. So Daddy has to be the mommy too, and he's trying really hard." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back, not wanting to cry in front of this brave little boy who was handling more than any child should have to. "Your daddy is doing a great job," she said. "And you know what? I think you're doing a great job too." Caleb smiled, a real smile, one that reached those eyes of his mother's. "Thanks, Miss Maya. I like you." "I like you too, Caleb." Later, after Caleb was in bed and Maya was gathering her things to leave, Ethan walked her to the door. They stood in the entryway, neither of them quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you," Ethan said, "for tonight, for being so good with him. He's easy to be good with." He asked me this morning if you could be his friend too, not just mine. Maya's heart clenched. What did you tell him? I told him he'd have to ask you himself. But based on what I heard from his room, I'm guessing the answer is yes. The answer is definitely yes. Ethan stepped closer, and for a moment Maya thought he might kiss her, but instead he just took her hand again, holding it like something precious. I'm not ready, he said quietly, for anything beyond this. Not yet. But I want you to know that this, whatever this is, it means something to me. You mean something to me. I'm not going anywhere, Maya said. We can take this as slow as you need. Even if I need glacially slow? Even if I need an ice pick and crampons. He laughed, and she loved the sound of it, loved how it filled the space between them with something that felt like hope. Good night, Maya. Good night, Ethan. She walked to her car in the cool night air, feeling lighter than she had in months. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not a sudden cure, not a dramatic transformation, but small moments of connection. Dinners with spaghetti from a jar, tours of rooms decorated with dinosaurs and stars, a child's question about protectors, a man's tentative hand reaching for hers. She didn't know where this was going. She didn't know if she and Ethan would become something more, or if they'd remain in this in-between space forever. But for the first time in a long time, she was okay with not knowing. She was okay with just seeing what happened next. And as she drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, past the spot where she'd pulled over a speeding silver sedan on a rainy night, Maya Hart smiled. The mistake that had started everything had become the beginning of something she hadn't even known she needed. Now she just had to figure out if she was brave enough to keep it. The weeks that followed moved with a rhythm Maya hadn't known she was missing. Tuesday evenings became dinner nights at Ethan's house, where Caleb would insist on showing her his latest Lego creation before they ate. Thursday afternoons were park visits, where she'd push Caleb on the swings while Ethan sat on the bench nearby, pretending to work on his laptop but mostly just watching them with an expression that made Maya's chest tighten in ways she didn't fully understand. Weekends were unpredictable. Sometimes a trip to the zoo, sometimes a movie matinee, sometimes just lazy hours in Ethan's backyard while Caleb hunted for bugs and they talked about everything and nothing. It was the kind of slow, gentle courtship that Maya had never experienced before. Her past relationships had been intense and fast, burning bright and then burning out. But this felt different. This felt like something being built rather than something being consumed. You're different lately, her partner Marcus said one evening as they sat in their patrol car outside a convenience store. Less what? Less like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maya considered this. Marcus had been her partner for 3 years, long enough to know her moods better than most people. He was 15 years older than her, married with 2 kids in college, and had appointed himself her unofficial big brother despite her protests. I met someone, she admitted. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Someone? Like a person you're seeing? It's complicated. It always is. He shifted in his seat to look at her properly. Tell me about him. Or her. I don't judge. Him. His name is Ethan. He's a graphic designer, single dad. Kids are a package deal. You ready for that? Maya thought about Caleb's wide eyes, his stuffed elephant, the way he'd asked if she could be his friend too. Yeah, she said, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. I think I am. And the dad? What's his story? Widower. His wife died 2 years ago. Marcus let out a low whistle. That's heavy. I know. Lot of baggage there. Grief doesn't just go away because someone new shows up. I know that too. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching a teenager skateboard past the convenience store. My cousin married a widower, he said finally. Took her 3 years before she stopped feeling like she was competing with a ghost. It's not easy, Maya. Just make sure you know what you're signing up for. Maya nodded, staring out the windshield at the darkening street. She did know. At least she thought she did. She'd seen the photo of Sarah on Caleb's nightstand. She'd noticed the way Ethan's hand sometimes drifted to his wedding ring when he was lost in thought. She'd heard him slip up and start a sentence with "Sarah always said," before catching himself with a look of confused guilt. But she'd also seen the way his face lit up when she walked through the door, The way he laughed more easily now than he had when she'd first met him. The way he'd started talking about the future, next month, next summer, next year, in a way that included her. "I think it's worth the risk," she said. Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that said he'd seen too much of life to be optimistic but hoped she was right anyway. "Then I hope it works out. You deserve something good, Hart." The radio crackled before she could respond, calling them to a fender bender on the other side of town. Maya started the engine, but Marcus's words stayed with her for the rest of the shift. "You deserve something good." She was starting to believe that might be true. A month into their tentative relationship, Maya decided it was time for Ethan to meet her parents. It wasn't a decision she made lightly. Introducing someone to her family meant introducing them to her father's illness, to the reality of what that illness was doing to him and to everyone who loved him. But Ethan had shared his grief with her, had let her into the raw edges of his loss. It felt right to do the same. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said as they sat in his car outside her parents' house. Caleb was with a babysitter for the afternoon. This first meeting was something Maya wanted to navigate without the added variable of an 8-year-old's unpredictable commentary. "I know I don't have to," Maya said. "I want to. But if it's too much—" "Ethan." She took his hand, feeling the familiar warmth of his palm against hers. "I want you to know this part of my life, the messy part, the hard part. Because if we're going to be whatever we're going to be, you need to see all of it." He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. "Okay," he said finally. "Then let's go." Her parents' house was exactly as it had always been, a modest colonial with a wraparound porch and a garden that her mother tended with religious devotion. But as Maya walked up the front path with Ethan beside her, she saw it through new eyes. The ramp that had been installed beside the stairs, the grab bar near the front door, the small signs of accommodation that marked the slow invasion of her father's illness into every aspect of their lives. Her mother met them at the door, and Maya was struck, as she always was, by how tired she looked. Linda Hart had once been a vibrant woman who ran marathons and organized neighborhood block parties. Now she moved with the careful economy of someone who was always conserving energy for the next crisis. "You must be Ethan," Linda said, extending her hand. "Maya's told me so much about you." "All good things, I hope." "Mostly." Linda's smile had an edge of exhaustion, but it was genuine. "She said you make a mean spaghetti." "From a jar," Ethan admitted, "but I'm told the secret is in the presentation." Linda laughed, a real laugh, the kind Maya hadn't heard from her in weeks. "I like him," she said to Maya. "He's honest." They went inside, and Maya felt the familiar tension settle into her shoulders. The house smelled the same as it always had, her mother's lavender sachets, her father's aftershave, but there was something else underneath now, something clinical. Something that spoke of medical equipment and carefully managed routines. Her father was in his study, sitting in the leather armchair that had been his favorite spot for as long as Maya could remember. He was reading a book, or at least holding one, his eyes moving across the pages with an attention that may or may not have been processing the words. "Dad," Maya said, moving to his side, "I want you to meet someone." Richard Hart looked up, and for a moment Maya saw a flicker of confusion cross his face. Then recognition settled in, and he smiled the smile she remembered from childhood, warm and welcoming and entirely present. "Maya, my girl." He set the book aside and stood, moving to embrace her with a steadiness that felt like a gift. "And who's this you've brought home?" "This is Ethan, Dad. He's a friend of mine." "A friend." Richard's eyes moved to Ethan with the sharp assessment of a father evaluating a potential suitor. "You treating my daughter well?" "I'm trying my best, sir." "That's all any of us can do." Richard extended his hand, and Ethan shook it with the kind of respectful firmness that Maya knew her father appreciated. "Come sit. Linda, are we having tea?" "Coffee," Linda called from the kitchen. "And those cookies Maya likes." They settled into the living room, and for the next hour, everything was almost normal. Richard told stories about Maya's childhood. The time she'd tried to arrest her kindergarten teacher for not giving her a gold star. The time she'd organized a neighborhood watch at age 10 because she was convinced there was a cat burglar on the loose. Ethan laughed in all the right places and asked questions that showed he was genuinely listening. But then, just as Linda was refilling their coffee cups, Richard turned to Ethan with a puzzled expression. "I'm sorry," he said. "Have we met before? You look familiar." "We met about an hour ago, Dad," Maya said gently. "This is Ethan, my friend." Richard blinked, and Maya watched the confusion settle over his features like a fog rolling in. "Ethan," he repeated, tasting the name. "Ethan. Maya, when did you get here?" "I've been here the whole time, Dad. We've been talking." "Have we?" Richard looked at his coffee cup like he'd never seen it before. "Linda? Linda, when did these people get here?" Linda moved to his side with the practiced ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "They've been here for a while, Richard. This is Maya, our daughter, and her friend Ethan." "Our daughter?" Richard's eyes found Maya's face, searching for something familiar. "Maya." "Yes, Maya." But there was a distance in his gaze now. A wall between him and the present moment that hadn't been there before. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, but she forced them back. She'd cried enough over this. She'd cried so much that sometimes she wondered if she had any tears left. But she wouldn't cry now, not in front of Ethan, not when her father was looking at her like she was a stranger wearing his daughter's face. "Maybe we should go," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Let Dad rest." "No, stay." Richard reached out and caught her hand, holding it with surprising strength. "Stay. I know you. I know your face. He struggled, fighting through the fog. "You used to fall asleep in my lap. When you were small. You'd fight it, but you'd always fall asleep, and I'd carry you to bed." Maya's careful control cracked. "Yeah, Dad. That was me. My little girl." Richard's eyes cleared for a moment, and he was entirely present, entirely himself. "You're all grown up now. When did that happen?" "Gradually," Maya managed, and then all at once. Richard smiled, and it was his real smile, the one she remembered from before. "That's how it always is," he said. "Gradually and then all at once." They stayed another 30 minutes, but Richard drifted in and out, sometimes present and sometimes lost in memories that seemed more real to him than the living room he was sitting in. When they finally left, Maya's mother walked them to the door with apologies that Maya tried to wave away. "He has good days and bad days," Linda said. "Today was somewhere in between." "You don't have to apologize, Mom." "I know, but I do anyway." Linda looked at Ethan, really looked at him, with the measuring gaze of a woman who had learned to assess people quickly. "Take care of her. She carries more than she lets on." "I will," Ethan said. "I promise." In the car, Maya sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the dashboard without really seeing it. Ethan didn't try to fill the quiet with words. He just reached over and took her hand, holding it the way she'd held his so many times before. "Thank you," she said finally, "for being there, for not making it weird." "It's not weird, it's just life." Ethan squeezed her hand. "My wife died of something I couldn't prevent. Your father is disappearing from something you can't cure. We're both losing people we love. It's not weird. It's just the hand we've been dealt." Maya turned to look at him, this man who had stumbled into her life through a traffic stop and a careless joke. She saw the understanding in his eyes, the complete absence of pity, and something shifted inside her. "I think I'm falling for you," she said. The words surprised her. She hadn't meant to say them, hadn't even fully known she felt them until they were out in the open. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I think I'm falling for you too," he said, "and it scares me more than I can tell you." "Why?" "Because last time I fell for someone, I lost her. And I don't know if I can survive that again." Maya understood. She understood completely. Because she was watching her father disappear day by day, and there was a part of her that wondered if she was building something with Ethan, only to have it taken away too. "Maybe we don't have to figure it all out right now," she said. "Maybe we just take it one day at a time." "One day at a time," Ethan repeated. "I can do that." They drove back to his house, where the babysitter was reading Caleb a story in the living room. When Caleb saw Maya, His face lit up with the kind of uncomplicated joy that children specialize in. "Miss Maya, did you bring me anything?" "Caleb," Ethan said, "that's not polite." "Actually," Maya said, reaching into her purse, "I did bring you something." She pulled out a small stuffed dinosaur, a triceratops she'd found at a shop downtown. "I saw this and thought of you." Caleb's eyes went wide. "A triceratops, that's my third favorite dinosaur." "What's your first favorite?" "T-Rex, obviously, and then Velociraptor." "Obviously." Maya handed him the dinosaur, and Caleb clutched it to his chest with the same intensity he reserved for Mr. Trunk. "Thank you, Miss Maya. He can be friends with Mr. Trunk." "What are you going to name him?" Caleb thought about this with great seriousness. "Tricer," he decided, because he's a triceratops, and Tricer sounds cool. Tricer is a great name. The babysitter gathered her things and left, and the three of them settled into the evening routine that had become familiar. Dinner was takeout pizza because Ethan claimed the spaghetti required advanced planning. Caleb chattered about his day at school, about the friend who had brought a frog for show and tell, about the math problem he'd gotten right when everyone else got it wrong. Maya listened to all of it, soaking in the ordinary details of this life she was slowly becoming part of. And when Caleb fell asleep on the couch, his new dinosaur tucked under one arm and Mr. Trunk under the other, she and Ethan sat together in a silence that felt like home. "He's going to remember today," Ethan said quietly. "The dinosaur. You meeting his grandparents? He'll ask about your parents now. He'll want to know them. Is that okay?" "It's more than okay." Ethan turned to look at her, and there was something new in his expression, something that looked like the beginning of certainty. "Maya, I know I said I wasn't ready, and maybe I'm still not completely, but I know I want you in our lives, not just as a friend, not just as someone we see sometimes. I want more." Maya's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "What does more look like?" "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle enough to break her. "Will you stay? Tonight? Not for, Caleb's here, so nothing, but just stay? I don't want you to go." "I'll stay," Maya said, and she meant it in more ways than one. She called in to take a personal day and spent the night on Ethan's couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like him. He slept in his own bed, the closed door a boundary they both respected, but knowing he was there, just down the hall, just a few steps away, was enough. In the morning, Caleb found her making coffee in the kitchen and reacted like she was a natural part of the scenery. "Did you have a sleepover?" he asked, climbing onto a kitchen stool. "Sort of. I fell asleep on the couch." "Like when I fall asleep watching movies and Daddy carries me to bed?" "Exactly like that." Caleb considered this. "Does that mean you're Daddy's girlfriend now?" Maya nearly choked on her coffee. That's a question for your daddy. But you like him, right? Like him?" "I like him," Maya admitted. "Is that okay with you?" Caleb's face broke into a grin that looked so much like his mother's photo that Maya's breath caught. "That's very okay. Daddy needs a girlfriend. He's been sad for a really long time." "He has been sad, but I think he's getting better." "Because of you?" Maya thought about the last few months. The park visits, the dinners, the long conversations, and the comfortable silences. She thought about the way Ethan had held her hand at her parents' house, the way he'd kissed her knuckles and said he was falling for her. "Maybe a little bit because of me," she said, "but mostly because of you. You're the thing that keeps your daddy going, Caleb. He loves you more than anything in the world." Caleb's grin turned shy. "I know. He tells me all the time." He hopped off the stool and padded toward his room, then stopped and looked back at her. "Miss Maya, I'm glad you had a sleepover. It made the house feel less empty." He disappeared into his room, and Maya stood alone in the kitchen, holding her coffee cup and feeling like something monumental had just shifted. When Ethan emerged a few minutes later, rumpled from sleep and squinting against the morning light, he found her sitting at the kitchen table with a strange expression on her face. "What happened?" he asked immediately. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Your son just gave me his blessing." Ethan's eyebrows shot up. "His blessing?" He asked if I was your girlfriend. I said he should ask you. He said it was very okay and that you need a girlfriend because you've been sad for a long time. He said that? Verbatim. Ethan sank into the chair across from her, running a hand through his already messy hair. Kids are terrifying. They just say things. He also said the house feels less empty with me here. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took her hand, the same gesture he'd made so many times before, but somehow different now. There was weight to it, intention. Maya, he said, I need to tell you something. Her heart dropped. Those words never preceded anything good. Okay. Last night, after you fell asleep, I went and looked at our wedding photos. Sarah's and mine. I do that sometimes when I'm feeling confused or guilty or like I'm betraying her somehow. He paused, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. But last night I wasn't feeling any of those things. I was just saying goodbye. Not to her. I'll never fully say goodbye to her, but to the idea that loving someone else means forgetting her. I looked at her face and I told her about you, about how you make me laugh, about how good you are with Caleb, about how I think she would have liked you. Maya's eyes were stinging. She blinked hard, trying to keep the tears at bay. What did she say? Nothing. She's dead. A ghost of a smile crossed Ethan's face. But if I believe in anything, I believe that the people we love want us to be happy. Sarah would have wanted Caleb to have someone who treats him like a normal kid instead of a tragedy. She would have wanted me to have someone who doesn't look at me with pity. She would have wanted... What would she have wanted? Maya prompted when he trailed off. She would have wanted me to stop wearing the ring. Maya's breath caught. She looked down at Ethan's left hand, at the simple gold band that had been there every time she'd seen him. It was still there now. But you're still wearing it, she said. I know. I wasn't ready this morning, but I'm getting there. He lifted her hand to his lips again, that gesture she was starting to associate with moments of significance. I'm getting there, Maya, and I wanted you to know that. I wanted you to know that I'm trying, that this isn't just some casual thing for me. That when Caleb asks if you're my girlfriend, I want the answer to be yes. Is this you asking me to be your girlfriend? Maya asked, a smile tugging at her lips despite the tears threatening to spill. Because if it is, you're doing a very roundabout job of it. Ethan laughed, and the sound of it warmed something deep in Maya's chest. Will you be my girlfriend? He asked. Officially? In a way I can actually explain to an 8-year-old? Yes, Maya said. Absolutely yes. They sealed it with a kiss. Their first real kiss, not on the forehead, not on the knuckles, but a proper kiss that tasted like morning coffee and new beginnings. It was interrupted by Caleb barreling into the kitchen and loudly announcing that he was starving and someone needed to make pancakes immediately. Did you two just kiss? Caleb demanded, his eyes ping-ponging between them. We did, Ethan said. So she is your girlfriend. She is. Caleb's whoop of excitement could probably be heard 3 houses away. He launched himself at Maya, wrapping his arms around her waist in a hug that nearly knocked her off her chair. This is the best day ever, he declared. Can we have pancakes now, with chocolate chips? Chocolate chip pancakes coming right up, Ethan said, and Maya watched him move around the kitchen with an ease she hadn't seen before. The heaviness that had clung to him when they'd first met, that bone-deep exhaustion of a man caring too much, seemed lighter now. Not gone, but lighter. Maybe she'd helped with that. Or maybe time had done its work, wearing down the sharp edges of his grief into something he could carry more easily. Either way, watching him flip pancakes while Caleb set the table with the serious concentration of a child given important work, Maya felt something settle into place inside her. This was where she belonged. This kitchen, this family, this life they were building from broken pieces. For the first time in as long as she could remember, Maya Hart wasn't running from anything. She was running toward something. The next 3 weeks were the happiest Maya could remember. She and Ethan fell into a comfortable rhythm, spending most of her off-duty hours at his house or taking Caleb on adventures around Millbrook. They went to the aquarium, where Caleb decided he wanted to be a marine biologist. They went to a minor league baseball game, where Caleb caught a foul ball and nearly passed out from excitement. They had picnics in the park and movie nights on the couch and long conversations after Caleb went to bed about nothing and everything. Maya introduced Ethan to Marcus, who gave him the third degree for approximately 45 minutes before declaring him acceptable. She introduced him to her mother, who wept with relief at seeing her daughter happy. She even introduced him to her father on one of his clearer days, and Richard had shaken Ethan's hand and said, "You take care of my little girl, or I'll find you." Dad was a cop for 30 years, Maya explained as they left. Old habits die hard. I gathered that from the look he gave me, Ethan said. I thought he was going to ask for my fingerprints. It was good. It was so good that Maya found herself waiting for something to go wrong. And then something did. The call came at 4 a.m. on a Thursday. Maya was asleep in her apartment. She and Ethan had agreed to spend some nights apart to give Caleb a sense of normalcy. When her phone buzzed with her mother's ringtone. "Mom? What's wrong?" "It's your father." Linda's voice was steady in that particular way that meant she was holding herself together by sheer force of will. "He fell. We're at the hospital." Maya was out of bed and dressed before she even hung up the phone. She texted Ethan on the way to the hospital. A simple "Dad fell. Going to ER. Will update when I know more." And then she didn't look at her phone again for 6 hours. Richard Hart had fractured his hip. It was a common injury for Alzheimer's patients, the doctors explained, because the disease affected balance and coordination. He would need surgery. He would need physical therapy. He would need more care than Linda could provide on her own. "We'll need to discuss long-term options," the doctor said, and Maya watched her mother's face crumble. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits and insurance calls and difficult conversations. Maya switched her shifts, calling in every favor she'd accumulated over 8 years on the force. She spent hours at her parents' house, helping her mother research assisted living facilities and in-home care options, and the 1,000 other details that came with watching a parent's independence slip away. Ethan was understanding. Of course he was. He knew loss, knew grief, knew what it meant to have your life upended by circumstances beyond your control. He texted supportive messages and offered to bring food, and didn't complain when Maya had to cancel their plans for the 3rd time in a week. But Maya could feel herself pulling away. Not intentionally, she didn't want to pull away. But the weight of her father's situation was pressing down on her from all sides, leaving no room for anything else. She was exhausted. She was overwhelmed. And every time she saw Ethan and Caleb, saw their little family and the happiness they'd built together, she felt a creeping fear that she would poison it somehow, that her grief and her stress and her inability to be fully present would drag them down too. "You should go," her mother said one evening, 2 weeks after the fall. They were sitting in Richard's hospital room, watching him sleep. Ethan called again, 3rd time today. "I can't leave you here alone." "Maya." Linda took her daughter's hand, and Maya was struck by how thin her mother's fingers had become, how fragile. "You've been here every day for 2 weeks. You've barely slept. You've canceled every plan you had. And that man keeps calling because he loves you, and you keep sending him to voicemail. I'm not. You are. And I understand why. This is hard. This is the hardest thing we've ever faced. But sweetheart, you can't help me if you run yourself into the ground. And you definitely can't build a life with someone if you keep pushing them away." Maya stared at her father's sleeping face. He looked peaceful, which was more than she could say for herself. "What if I can't do both?" she asked quietly. "What if I can't be here for you and Dad, and also be there for Ethan and Caleb? What if there's not enough of me to go around?" "Then you do what I've done for the past 3 years," Linda said. "You muddle through. You ask for help. You accept that you can't be everything to everyone, and you hope that the people who love you will understand." Maya thought about Ethan, about the patient understanding in his voice every time she canceled, about Caleb, who had made her a get-well card for her father even though he'd never met the man, about the life she was building and the life that was falling apart, and how she was supposed to hold both of them at once. "I'm scared, Mom." "Of what?" "That I'll let them down. That I'll promise them things I can't deliver. That I'll be too broken by all of this to give them what they deserve." Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed Maya's hand. "Your father and I have been married for 42 years. And in all that time, you know what he's never once done? He's never once expected me to be perfect. He's expected me to show up, to try, to love him even when it was hard. She paused. That's all any of us can do, Maya. Show up, try, love even when it's hard. Maya stayed at the hospital until her father woke up, until she'd helped her mother get him settled and comfortable. Then she drove to Ethan's house. It was after 10 when she arrived. The lights were still on, which meant Caleb was probably asleep and Ethan was probably working late to make up for the time he'd spent worrying about her. She sat in her car for a moment, gathering her courage. Then she went inside. Ethan met her at the door, and the relief on his face when he saw her made Maya's heart ache. He didn't say anything. He just pulled her into his arms and held her while she finally let herself cry. "I'm sorry," she said into his chest. "I'm so sorry. You've been dealing with a crisis," Ethan said. "You don't have to apologize for that. I've been pushing you away. You've been overwhelmed. There's a difference." Maya pulled back, looking up at him. "How are you so understanding? How are you not angry?" Ethan brushed the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. "Because I know what it's like. When Sarah was sick, before the accident, she had cancer. Did I tell you that? Stage 2 breast cancer. She beat it, but for those months when she was doing chemo, I pushed everyone away. My parents, my friends, everyone. I couldn't be present for anyone because I was so focused on her, and the people who really loved me, they understood. They waited. But that's different. Your wife was dying. Your father is dying too, Maya, just slower, and you're allowed to grieve that. You're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to not have enough left over for me and Caleb. We'll still be here. Will you?" The question came out smaller than she intended. "Because I keep thinking, what if I can't be what you need? What if I'm always going to be divided between you and my family? What if—" "Maya." Ethan's voice was firm enough to stop her spiral. "Do you love me?" The question hung in the air between them. They hadn't said those words yet. Not like this, not directly. They danced around it, hinted at it, but never said it outright. "Yes," Maya said, "I love you. And I love you, and Caleb loves you, and that's not conditional on you being perfect or available or anything else. That's just love. It doesn't keep score." Maya wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that love was enough, that he would keep waiting, that she wouldn't eventually exhaust his patience and his understanding. But there was a voice in her head, the same voice that had told her she didn't deserve good things, that something would inevitably go wrong. And it was getting louder every day. "Can I stay tonight?" she asked. "You can stay every night if you want." She stayed. And for a little while, wrapped in Ethan's arms with Caleb sleeping down the hall, Maya let herself believe that everything would be okay. But the cracks were already forming, and it was only a matter of time before they broke wide open. The cracks started small, the way they always do. A missed phone call here, a canceled dinner there. Maya told herself it was temporary, that once her father was stable, once the new care routine was established, she would find her way back to the life she'd been building with Ethan and Caleb. But the truth was more complicated than that. And deep down, in the part of her heart she tried not to examine too closely, Maya knew she was unraveling. Richard Hart came home from the hospital 3 weeks after his fall, but the man who returned was not the same man who had left. The surgery had been successful. His hip was healing well, but something in his mind had shifted during those weeks of unfamiliar rooms and beeping machines. The confusion that had once come in waves now seemed to be a constant tide, pulling him further and further from shore. "He doesn't recognize the house," Linda said when Maya stopped by on a Wednesday afternoon. "He keeps asking when we're going home. I tell him we are home, and he looks at me like I'm lying to him." Maya watched her father through the living room window. He was sitting in a wheelchair on the back patio, staring at the garden he'd tended for 30 years, like he'd never seen it before. The physical therapist was with him, gently guiding him through exercises that Richard completed with mechanical obedience and vacant eyes. What did the doctor say? That hospital stays can accelerate cognitive decline in Alzheimer's patients. That this might be temporary. Linda's voice cracked on the last word. Or it might not be. Maya wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the weight pressing down on her mother's shoulders. But she couldn't find the words. Because the truth was, there were no words for watching your father disappear. There was only the endless grinding work of getting through each day. "I'll take the night shift tonight," Maya said. "You need to sleep. You have work tomorrow. I'll manage." Mom, please, let me help." Linda looked at her daughter with an expression that held too many things, gratitude and guilt, and a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay." That night, Maya sat with her father while her mother slept in the bedroom upstairs. Richard was restless, moving in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid and sometimes lost in memories that Maya couldn't follow. At 3 a.m., he woke up suddenly and looked at her with clear, focused eyes. "Maya," he said, and his voice was his voice again, the voice she remembered from childhood. "My little girl." "Hey, Dad." She moved to his bedside, taking his hand. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, so tired." He squeezed her fingers with surprising strength. "I dream about you sometimes, when you were small. Do you remember the night I taught you to ride a bike? You ran beside me for 3 blocks, holding onto the seat. Then you let go and I didn't realize it for another block. I was so mad at you when I figured it out." Richard smiled, and for a moment he was completely present. "You were furious. Said I'd tricked you. But you were riding, Maya, all on your own. Sometimes that's how we learn. We don't realize we can do something until someone lets go." "Dad, I'm letting go," he said quietly. "A little more every day. I can feel it happening. And I need you to know that it's okay. It's okay to let me go too." Tears were streaming down Maya's face now, but she didn't bother wiping them away. "I'm not ready." "We're never ready. That's not how it works." Richard's eyes drifted toward the window, toward the darkness outside. "But you have people who love you. That young man, what's his name?" "Ethan. Ethan. He seems good, kind. And there's a boy?" "Caleb. He's 8. 8. Richard smiled again, but it was fading now, the fog rolling back in. "I had a daughter who was 8 once. She caught fireflies in a jar and cried when they died. Had to explain that some things aren't meant to be kept." "Dad, that was me. I'm your daughter." But he was gone again, lost in whatever place his mind had wandered to. His hand went slack in hers, and his eyes drifted closed, and Maya sat there in the dark, crying silent tears for a man who was still breathing but already partly gone. She didn't text Ethan that night, didn't call, didn't reach out at all. She told herself it was because she didn't want to wake him, but the truth was simpler and more painful. She didn't know how to let him see her like this. Broken, struggling, unable to hold herself together. The next morning, exhausted and hollow, Maya went to work. She moved through her shift on autopilot, responding to calls and filing reports with mechanical precision. Marcus noticed, of course he did, but when he tried to talk to her about it, she shut him down with a look that said, "Not now, not ever." That evening, she was supposed to go to Ethan's house for dinner. It was Caleb's birthday, and she'd bought him a present weeks ago, a dinosaur puzzle that she knew he'd love. But as the end of her shift approached, Maya found herself paralyzed by dread. She couldn't do it. She couldn't walk into that warm house with its laughter and love and pretend that she was okay. She couldn't sit across from Ethan and smile while her heart was breaking. She couldn't hold Caleb and give him birthday wishes when she felt like she might shatter at any moment. So she texted Ethan instead. "I'm so sorry, something came up with Dad. Can't make it tonight. Please tell Caleb happy birthday from me." The response came within minutes. "Is he okay? Do you need anything?" "He's fine, just tired. I'll call tomorrow." But she didn't call tomorrow, or the day after that. She sent brief texts, still at parents, "Will update soon," but she didn't answer when Ethan called. She couldn't explain why. She just knew that every time she saw his name on her screen, her throat closed up and her chest tightened, and she felt like she was drowning. A week passed. Then 2. Maya threw herself into work and into caring for her father, filling every moment so there was no space left for thinking, no space for feeling. She took extra shifts and volunteered for overtime. When she wasn't working, she was at her parents' house, helping her mother with the endless tasks of caregiving. She told herself she was doing the right thing. Her family needed her. Her father was slipping away, and her mother was exhausted, and this was where she belonged. not in some borrowed happiness with a man and a boy who deserved better than she could give them. But late at night, alone in her apartment, Maya lay awake and stared at the ceiling and missed Ethan so much it felt like physical pain. On day 15, her phone rang while she was doing paperwork at the station. She almost didn't answer. She'd gotten good at not answering, but something made her look at the screen. It wasn't Ethan. It was Caleb's school. Officer Hart, this is Principal Morrison from Millbrook Elementary. Caleb Brooks has you listed as an emergency contact. We haven't been able to reach his father, and we need someone to pick Caleb up. He's in the nurse's office. Maya's heart dropped. Is he okay? What happened? He's not injured. He's been crying for an hour. He won't talk to anyone. He keeps asking for you. 20 minutes later, Maya walked into the nurse's office and found Caleb curled up on a cot, clutching Mr. Trunk to his chest. His face was red and blotchy from crying, and when he saw her, he burst into fresh tears. Miss Maya, you came! She crouched beside him, gathering him into her arms. Of course I came. What's wrong, buddy? What happened? Everyone was talking about their moms, Caleb choked out between sobs. It's Mother's Day next week and we were making cards and I don't have a mom and everyone kept looking at me and... Oh, Caleb. Maya held him tighter, rocking him gently. I'm so sorry. And then I wanted to call you because you always make things better, but Daddy said you're busy with your own family and I shouldn't bother you, but I missed you so much and... He dissolved into sobs again, clutching her like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath him. Maya felt her heart crack down the middle. She'd been so focused on her own pain, her own family, her own spiral of grief and fear that she'd forgotten this little boy was grieving too. He'd lost his mother 2 years ago, and now he felt like he was losing her as well. Because of her. Because she'd pulled away. Listen to me, she said, pulling back just enough to look into his eyes. I'm here. I'm right here. And I'm sorry I've been away. That wasn't because of anything you did. That was because sometimes adults get scared and instead of asking for help, we hide. And that was wrong of me. Caleb sniffled. You got scared. Very scared. My daddy is sick and I didn't know how to be strong for everyone at once. So I tried to do it all alone. But that was a mistake. Daddy says we shouldn't try to do things alone. He says that's why we have family. Your daddy is a very smart man. He misses you. Caleb's voice was small now, weighted with a sadness that was too big for an 8-year-old. He doesn't say it, but I can tell. He looks at his phone a lot, and sometimes I hear him talking to your picture. Maya's throat tightened. My picture? The one from the zoo. He keeps it on his desk. Caleb wiped his nose with the back of his hand. Are you and Daddy still together? Or did you break up? Because if you broke up, I think that's really sad and you should unbreak up. Despite everything, Maya almost smiled. Children and their simple solutions. Unbreak up. As if it were that easy. But maybe it was. Maybe the only thing standing between her and the life she wanted was herself. Where's your dad now? She asked. He had a big meeting for work. That's why the school couldn't reach him. Okay. How about I take you home and wait with you until he gets there? Would that be okay? Caleb's face lit up with something that looked dangerously close to hope. Really? You'd do that? I'd do anything for you, buddy. Don't you know that by now? She signed him out and drove him home, and for the first time in weeks, the tightness in her chest eased just a little. Caleb chattered the whole way, about school, about his friend Marcus who had a pet lizard, about the new Lego set he was saving up for. Maya listened to every word, drinking in the normalcy of it, the simple joy of being with this child who had somehow become hers. At the house, she let them in with the spare keys she still had and made Caleb a snack. They sat at the kitchen table, eating apple slices and peanut butter, and Caleb told her about the Mother's Day card situation in more detail. I didn't know what to do, he said. Everyone else was drawing pictures of their moms, and I could have drawn Mommy, but she's not here anymore. And then I thought about drawing you, but I didn't know if that was allowed. What do you mean, allowed? Like, if I'm allowed to think of you as, he looked down at his apple slice, like a mom, because you're not really my mom. You're just Daddy's girlfriend. Maya felt those words hit her like a physical blow. Just Daddy's girlfriend. Not because Caleb meant it cruelly, but because he'd reduced their relationship to its most uncertain terms. And maybe he was right. Maybe that's all she was. All she'd been willing to be. "Caleb," she said carefully, "can I tell you something?" He looked up, his eyes still red-rimmed from crying. "I may not be your mom, but I love you. Not like a girlfriend loves her boyfriend's kid. Like someone who's choosing to be part of your family. If you'll have me." Caleb's lower lip trembled. "You mean it?" "I mean it. Even though your daddy is sick, even though you've been scared, even though all of that. Because here's the thing, Caleb. I was so busy being scared that I forgot what's important. And you and your daddy, you're what's important. You're what I want to fight for." Caleb launched himself across the table and into her arms, nearly knocking over the peanut butter in the process. Maya caught him and held him tight, feeling tears streaming down her own face now. "I love you, Miss Maya," Caleb whispered into her shoulder. "I love you too, buddy. So much." That's how Ethan found them when he came home 30 minutes later. Sitting on the kitchen floor surrounded by Legos, laughing at something Caleb had said about dinosaurs and peanut butter. He stopped in the doorway, his face cycling through confusion, relief, and something that looked like cautious hope. "Maya?" She looked up at him, this man she'd been running from for weeks, and felt all of her carefully constructed walls come crashing down. "Hi," she said. It was inadequate. It was everything. "Daddy!" Caleb jumped up. "Miss Maya came back. She picked me up from school, and we've been building Legos, and she said she loves me, and she wants to be part of our family." Ethan's eyes met Maya's over his son's head. "Is that true? The Legos part or the loving him part?" "All of it." Maya stood slowly, brushing Lego pieces off her uniform. The school called. He was having a rough day. I was listed as an emergency contact. "I know, they got hold of me about 20 minutes ago. I was on my way home when I got the message that you'd already picked him up." Ethan's voice was careful, measured, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Maya, what's going on? You've been avoiding me for 2 weeks." "I know. You missed Caleb's birthday. You missed Sunday dinners. You didn't return my calls." "I know." "Then help me understand, because I thought we were building something. I thought you wanted this, and then you just disappeared." Caleb looked between them with the worried eyes of a child who had seen too much fall apart. "Are you guys fighting?" "No, buddy," Ethan said, his voice softening. "We're just talking. Why don't you go play in your room for a little while? Miss Maya and I need to have a grown-up conversation. But it'll be okay. I promise." Caleb hesitated, looking at Maya for confirmation. She nodded, forcing a small smile. "Go on. We'll be fine." After he left, the kitchen felt too quiet. Maya stood with her back against the counter, arms crossed over her chest like she could hold herself together through sheer physical pressure. Ethan stood near the table, maintaining a distance that felt deliberate. "So," he said, "talk to me." "I don't know where to start." "Start anywhere. Start with why you stopped calling. Start with why you looked at my name on your phone and chose not to answer. Start with whatever you need to start with, but please, Maya, just talk to me." The rawness in his voice broke something loose inside her. "I was scared." "Of what?" "Of everything. Of my dad dying, of my mom falling apart, of not being enough for any of you." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "My dad is getting worse, Ethan. Every day, a little bit more of him slips away, and I have to watch it happen. And I looked at you and Caleb, at this perfect little family you've built, and I thought, I can't give them what they deserve. I'm too broken. I'm too distracted. I'm too much of a mess. So you decided to just leave? Without even talking to me about it?" "I didn't decide anything. I just stopped. I stopped calling because calling felt impossible. I stopped coming over because I didn't know how to be here without falling apart. I thought I was protecting you, protecting Caleb, but I was really just protecting myself from having to admit that I couldn't handle it." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion he was clearly trying to control. "Do you know what the last 2 weeks have been like for me? Watching my phone, waiting for you to call. trying to explain to Caleb why you weren't coming to dinner, why you weren't at his birthday, why you just vanished? Ethan, he cried himself to sleep the night of his birthday because you weren't there. Because the one person who made him feel like he might have a mom again was suddenly gone, just like his actual mom was suddenly gone. And I had to hold him and tell him it would be okay when I didn't even know if it would be. Maya felt tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. I can see that. But sorry doesn't undo the fact that you did exactly what I was afraid of. You left, just like everyone else. I didn't leave. I pulled away. There's a difference. Is there? Ethan's voice cracked. Because from where I was standing, it felt the same. It felt like you decided we weren't worth the struggle. Like when things got hard, you chose to be somewhere else. Maya wanted to argue. She wanted to explain that it wasn't like that she hadn't chosen to leave, that she'd been drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. But the truth was, Ethan was right. She had chosen. She had chosen to hide in her pain instead of sharing it. She had chosen isolation over vulnerability. You're right, she said quietly. I did choose, and it was the wrong choice. Ethan's jaw tightened. So what now? You show up after 2 weeks of silence and everything's supposed to be okay? We just pick up where we left off? No, I don't expect that. I don't expect anything. Maya uncrossed her arms, letting them fall to her sides, letting herself be exposed. But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere, even if you can't forgive me, even if you need time. I'm going to be here. I'm going to keep showing up. Because I love you, Ethan, and I love Caleb, and I was an idiot to think I could walk away from that. You love me. I love you, and I know I have a terrible way of showing it. I know I pulled away when I should have held on tighter, but my dad is dying, Ethan, a little bit more every day, and I got so lost in that grief that I forgot how to hold on to anything else. Ethan's expression shifted, some of the anger giving way to something more complicated. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me help? Because I didn't know how. Because I've never had someone who wanted to help carry the weight. I've always done it alone. It's what I know. That's not how this works. Ethan crossed the kitchen, stopping just in front of her, close enough to touch, but not touching. When you love someone, you don't have to carry things alone. That's the whole point. That's what I've been trying to show you. I know. I know that now. Maya looked up at him, letting him see all the pain and fear and desperate hope she'd been trying to hide. I'm asking for another chance. I'm asking you to let me prove that I can do better, that I can be the person you and Caleb deserve. For a long moment, Ethan just looked at her. Maya could see the battle playing out behind his eyes, the part of him that wanted to protect himself and his son versus the part of him that still loved her despite everything. My wife died 2 years ago, he said finally, and for a long time after that, I thought I would never let anyone in again. I thought the risk was too great. The pain of losing someone, it's not something you survive twice. Ethan. But then I met you, and against every instinct I had, I let you in. I let Caleb let you in. And these last 2 weeks, watching him miss you, watching him hurt, it was almost as bad as losing Sarah. Because you weren't dead, Maya. You were just gone. I'm not gone anymore. How do I know that? How do I know you won't pull away again the next time things get hard? Because things are going to get hard. That's life. And I can't have Caleb getting hurt again. Maya reached out and took his hands, holding them tight. You don't know. That's the truth. There's no guarantee I won't screw up again. But I can promise you that I'll try. I'll try to stay present even when I'm scared. I'll try to lean on you instead of pushing you away. I'll try to be the partner you deserve and the whatever I am to Caleb, the person who shows up for him. Ethan looked down at their joined hands. When he looked up again, there were tears in his eyes. If you hurt him again, I won't. If you disappear again, I won't. If you ever make him cry like that again, then you have every right to hate me. But Ethan, I'm going to spend every day proving that you don't have to worry. I'm choosing you, both of you, not just when it's easy, not just when my life is calm, always. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything that had been said and everything that couldn't be unsaid. Then Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I missed you," he said into her hair. "So much." "I missed you too. Every single day." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the kitchen where they'd shared so many meals, so many conversations, so many quiet moments of building a life together. And when they finally pulled apart, Ethan was almost smiling. "Caleb is probably listening at the door," he said. "Probably. He's going to want to know if we're okay. Are we?" Ethan cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "We're going to be. But Maya, this is it. This is the last chance. Not because I'm punishing you, but because I can't let Caleb get attached to someone who might leave again. So if you're in, you need to be all in. No more running." "No more running," Maya repeated. "I promise." He kissed her then. A gentle kiss. Tentative and testing, but still achingly familiar. When they broke apart, Maya heard a small cheer from somewhere near the hallway. "Caleb!" Ethan called out. "I know you're there!" The sound of running feet, and then Caleb burst into the kitchen, his face split into the biggest grin Maya had ever seen. "You're not fighting anymore. Does this mean Miss Maya is staying?" Ethan looked at Maya. Maya looked at Caleb. "Yeah, buddy," she said. "I'm staying." Caleb threw his arms around both of them, pulling them into a group hug that was awkward and wonderful and exactly what Maya needed. "This is the best day ever," he declared. "Even better than my birthday." "No offense, Daddy." "None taken," Ethan said, laughing. And standing there in that kitchen, wrapped in the arms of the family she'd almost lost, Maya made a silent promise to herself. No more hiding, no more running. Whatever came next, her father's decline, the challenges of blending two broken families, the ordinary difficulties of building a life together, she would face it with Ethan and Caleb by her side. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to find out. The days that followed their reconciliation moved with a tentative hopefulness, like the first warm breeze after a long winter. Maya found herself measuring time differently now, not in shifts and overtime hours, but in dinners shared around Ethan's kitchen table, in Caleb's laughter as he recounted the latest drama from his third-grade classroom, in the quiet moments after bedtime when she and Ethan sat together on the couch and talked about everything and nothing. But beneath the surface of this fragile new normal, Maya could feel the weight of her other life pressing against the edges. Her father was getting worse. Every visit to her parents' house revealed another small loss. A forgotten word, a confused moment, a flash of fear in her father's eyes when he couldn't remember where he was or who was with him. Her mother was holding on, but barely, her own exhaustion showing in the deepening lines around her eyes and the slight tremor in her hands when she poured coffee. Maya was trying to be present for all of it, trying to show up for Ethan and Caleb while also showing up for her parents, trying to hold the two halves of her life together through sheer force of will. But she could feel the strain building, like a rubber band stretched too tight, and she knew something would have to give. It was Ethan who finally noticed what she was too stubborn to admit. They were sitting on his back porch, watching Caleb chase fireflies in the yard. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, and the air was thick with the sweet smell of summer. Maya had her head on Ethan's shoulder, her eyes half closed, fighting the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. "When was the last time you slept through the night?" Ethan asked quietly. Maya didn't answer immediately. She was trying to remember, and the fact that she couldn't was probably answer enough. "I'm fine," she said finally. "That's not what I asked." "Ethan, you're running on empty, Maya. I can see it. You're trying to be everything to everyone, and you're destroying yourself in the process." Maya lifted her head to look at him. In the fading light, his face was full of concern, and something else, a determination she recognized from the night they'd reconciled. The look that said he wasn't going to let this go. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked. "My mom needs help. My dad needs care. I can't just abandon them." "No one's asking you to abandon them. But you can't pour from an empty cup, Maya. At some point, you have to let someone help you too." "I'm letting you help." "Are you?" Ethan's voice was gentle, but the question had an edge. "Because from where I'm sitting, It looks like you're still trying to do everything alone. You come here, and you're wonderful with Caleb, and you're wonderful with me. But then you leave and go deal with your parents by yourself, and you don't let me anywhere near that part of your life." Maya wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because he was right. She'd been keeping her two worlds separate, partly out of habit and partly out of a deep-seated fear that if Ethan saw the full weight of what she was dealing with, he'd realize she was too much trouble. That he'd look at the chaos of her family situation and decide that he and Caleb were better off without her. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that if I let you all the way in, you'll see how messy everything is, and you'll change your mind." "About what?" "About us. About me. About wanting me in your life." Ethan reached out and took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Maya, do you remember what I told you the night you came back? About how I let you in even though I was terrified of getting hurt again?" "I remember." "Well, I need you to understand something. I didn't let you in because I thought you were perfect. I didn't fall for you because your life was simple or easy. I fell for you because of who you are, brave and stubborn and so full of love that you don't even know what to do with it all." He squeezed her hand. "The messy parts don't scare me. They're just part of the package." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. "You haven't seen the really messy parts yet." "Then let me see them." "What?" "Let me see them," Ethan repeated. "Take me to your parents' house. Introduce me to this part of your life. Stop trying to protect me from the hard stuff and let me be your partner in all of it, not just the easy parts." Maya stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. The offer hung in the air between them, terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She thought about her mother's exhausted eyes, her father's confused wandering, the medical equipment and pill schedules and constant vigilance that had become the rhythm of her parents' days. She thought about bringing Ethan into that chaos, letting him see the reality of what she was dealing with. And then she thought about how tired she was of carrying it alone. "Okay," she said, "but fair warning, it's a lot." "I've done a lot," Ethan said. "Remember, I buried my wife, rebuilt my life, and raised an 8-year-old who thinks dinosaurs are the answer to everything. I can handle a lot." For the first time in weeks, Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just the simple comfort of not having to be strong all by herself. "Tomorrow," she said. "I'll take you tomorrow." The next morning was a Saturday, and Caleb was at a friend's house for a birthday party. Maya and Ethan drove to her parents' home in a silence that was more thoughtful than tense. Maya watched the familiar streets pass by, the elementary school where she'd learned to read, the park where she'd played as a child, the church where she'd attended summer camps. Every landmark held memories of a simpler time, before her father's mind had started to betray him. "You okay?" Ethan asked as they pulled into her parents' driveway. "Ask me again in an hour." Her mother met them at the door, and Maya watched her face cycle through surprise, caution, and something that might have been hope. "Ethan," Linda said, "Maya mentioned you might be coming by. Please come in." The house was exactly as it always was, familiar and strange at the same time. The medical equipment that had taken up residence in the living room, the whiteboard by the kitchen with her father's daily schedule, the photos on the walls that chronicled a life that was slowly slipping away. "Dad's in the study," Linda said. "He's having a good morning so far. Recognized me right away when he woke up." "That's good," Maya said, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice. Good mornings were relative now. They meant he remembered who his wife was. They didn't mean he could carry on a normal conversation or recall what he'd had for breakfast. Ethan followed her through the house, taking in the details without comment. Maya watched him out of the corner of her eye, trying to gauge his reaction. But his face was calm, his expression thoughtful rather than overwhelmed. Richard was sitting in his favorite chair, looking out the window at the garden. He turned when they entered, and for a moment his eyes were clear. "Maya," he said, "and you brought someone." "Hi, Dad. This is Ethan. You met him once before, a few months ago." Richard studied Ethan with the careful attention of a man who was used to evaluating people. "You're the one with the boy, the one she talks about." "That's me, sir." Ethan extended his hand, and Richard shook it with surprising firmness. "Sit, both of you. Linda's making tea." They sat, and for the next 20 minutes, Richard was more himself than Maya had seen him in weeks. He asked Ethan about his work, about Caleb, about how he and Maya had met. He laughed at the story of the traffic stop, his eyes crinkling the way they always had when he found something genuinely amusing. "She got that from me," he said, gesturing at Maya. "The mouth, always saying things without thinking them through. Dad, it's true. Remember when you told Mrs. Patterson that her Christmas cookies tasted like cardboard? You were 7. She didn't speak to us for a year." In my defense, they really did taste like cardboard. Richard laughed again, and for a moment Maya could almost forget that anything was wrong, could almost pretend they were just a normal family having a normal conversation. Then the fog rolled in. She saw it happen, the way Richard's eyes went distant, the way his smile faded into confusion. He looked at Ethan like he'd never seen him before. "Who are you?" Richard asked, his voice sharp with sudden fear. "What are you doing in my house?" "Dad, it's okay. This is Ethan. He's my friend. He's safe." "I don't know any Ethan. Linda! Linda! There's a stranger in the house." Linda appeared in the doorway, moving quickly despite her exhaustion. "Richard, honey, it's okay. This is Maya's friend, remember? She told us he was coming." I don't remember anything. Why can't I remember?" Richard's voice was rising, panic edging into his words. "What's happening to me? Why can't I remember?" Maya felt her heart breaking all over again. This was the hardest part. Not the forgetting, but the moments when her father realized he was forgetting. When he became aware of the gaps in his mind and couldn't understand why they were there. She moved to his side, kneeling beside his chair. "Dad, Dad, look at me. It's okay. You're safe. You're home." "Maya." He grabbed her hand, holding on tight. "Maya, something's wrong with me. I can't hold on to things. They keep slipping away." "I know, Dad. I know. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget you. You won't. I'm right here. I'm always going to be right here." Maya looked up at Ethan, expecting to see shock or discomfort on his face. Instead, she saw something else entirely. She saw understanding. She saw compassion. She saw the look of a man who knew exactly what it meant to watch someone you love slip away. Without a word, Ethan moved to sit beside Linda on the couch. He spoke to her quietly, asking about Richard's routine, about what helped calm him down, about the day-to-day reality of caring for someone with Alzheimer's. Linda answered his questions with the weary relief of someone who had finally found someone willing to listen. It took another 20 minutes for Richard to calm down. Maya sat with him, holding his hand, talking about nothing in particular. Old family vacations, her first day of school, the puppy they'd had when she was 10. Slowly, the panic faded from his eyes, replaced by a tired confusion that was somehow easier to bear. "I'm going to rest now," Richard said finally. "Will you be here when I wake up?" "I'll be here, Dad." She helped him to the bedroom where he fell asleep almost instantly. When she came back to the living room, she found Ethan and her mother deep in conversation. "The physical therapist comes 3 times a week," Linda was saying, "and there's a home health aide who helps with bathing and dressing. But the nights are hard. He wanders sometimes. I've tried baby gates, but he gets so upset when he can't get where he wants to go." "Have you looked into respite care?" Ethan asked. "Even just a few hours a week to give you a break?" "I've thought about it. But the guilt—" "I understand. After Sarah died, I felt guilty every time I accepted help with Caleb. Like I should be able to do it all myself. But you can't. No one can. And accepting help isn't a weakness. It's just being realistic about what one person can manage." Linda looked at him with an expression Maya recognized. It was the look of someone who had been holding up a wall for so long that they'd forgotten what it felt like to have support. "You're good for her," Linda said, glancing at Maya. "For my daughter. I can see that now." "She's good for me too, and for my son. She's become part of our family." "Then maybe—" Linda hesitated. "Maybe you can help me convince her to take better care of herself. She's been running herself ragged trying to be here for us, and I worry about her." "Mom," Maya started. "I know you don't want to hear it," Linda cut her off gently, "but you're not invincible, sweetheart. You can't keep burning the candle at both ends forever." "She's right," Ethan said, "and I have an idea. But I want to run it by both of you first. They talked for another hour. Ethan had done research, it turned out. Late at night, after Maya had fallen asleep, he'd been looking into resources for Alzheimer's caregivers. He'd found a support group that met weekly at the community center. He'd found a nonprofit that provided free respite care for qualifying families. He'd even found a daycare program specifically designed for people with memory issues, staffed by trained professionals who could give Richard meaningful activities while giving Linda a break. "I didn't know any of this existed," Linda said, paging through the printouts Ethan had brought. "Most people don't. It took me weeks to find it all, but it's there. You just have to know where to look." Maya stared at the man she loved, seeing him in a new light. He'd done all this without telling her, without making a big deal of it. He'd just quietly figured out how to help, and then showed up ready to make things easier. "Why didn't you tell me you were doing this?" she asked. "Because I wanted to make sure it was real first. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up if the resources weren't actually available." Ethan shrugged. "And because I know you. If I told you I was researching Alzheimer's care, you would have insisted on doing it yourself. This way, the work is already done. All you have to do is let people help." Linda looked between them with something that might have been wonder. "You two are good together," she said. "I mean that. I can see how much you care for each other." "He puts up with my stubbornness," Maya said. "She puts up with my 8-year-old's obsession with dinosaurs," Ethan countered. "Sounds like a fair trade to me," Linda said, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. They stayed for lunch, and then through the afternoon as Richard woke from his nap and had another good stretch. He didn't remember meeting Ethan earlier, but he was calm this time, accepting the introduction without panic. They talked about the Phillies, Richard's lifelong obsession, about Caleb, whom Ethan described in loving detail, about the garden that Linda was trying to maintain despite everything. By the time they left, something had shifted. Maya could feel it, a lightening of the load she'd been carrying. Not because her father's situation had changed, but because she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. In the car, she reached over and took Ethan's hand. "Thank you," she said, "for today, for all of it." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You walked into the hardest part of my life and you didn't flinch. You didn't run. You just helped. That's what partners do." Not all of them. Not every partner would have spent weeks researching Alzheimer's resources just because their girlfriend's dad is sick. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maya, when Sarah was dying, the cancer, before the accident, I was alone. My parents tried to help, but they didn't know how. Our friends didn't know what to say. I spent months navigating a nightmare by myself, and I swore that if I ever had the chance to be there for someone else the way I wish someone had been there for me, I would take it." "So this is about guilt? About making up for something?" "No, it's about love. I love you. And when you love someone, you show up for the hard stuff. That's just how it works." Maya felt tears threatening again. She'd done more crying in the last few months than she had in the previous 5 years, but this time they felt different, lighter, like tears of relief instead of grief. "I love you too," she said, "and I'm sorry I made it so hard for you to show up." "You see, you didn't make it hard. You're just not used to having someone who wants to be there. But that's going to change. I'm going to keep showing up, Maya, whether you think you deserve it or not. And eventually, you're going to realize that you do deserve it, that we both do." They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined on the center console. When they pulled into Ethan's driveway, Caleb was already home from the birthday party, bouncing on the front porch with barely contained energy. "Miss Maya, Daddy, I won a prize at the party. It's a goldfish. Can I keep it? Please, please, please." Maya looked at Ethan, who was already sighing with the resignation of a parent who knew he was about to have a goldfish. "What did you name it?" Ethan asked. "Rex, because he's going to be king of the fish." "Of course he is." They went inside and Caleb showed off Rex in his plastic bag with all the ceremony of a royal presentation. Maya helped him set up the fishbowl while Ethan ordered pizza, and by the time dinner arrived, Rex was swimming in his new home on the kitchen counter, blissfully unaware of his regal status. That night, after Caleb was in bed and Rex was settled in his kingdom, Maya and Ethan sat on the back porch again. The stars were out, scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds, and the summer air was soft and warm. "I want to bring Caleb to meet my parents," Maya said suddenly. Properly, I mean. Not just a quick visit, but really spend time there. I want him to know my dad while there's still time. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? It might be hard for him, seeing someone sick like that. I know, but he's already lost one grandparent to something he couldn't understand. I don't want him to be kept away from my dad just because the situation is difficult. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. And my dad, even on his bad days, there are moments of clarity, moments of real connection. I want Caleb to have those moments. Then we'll do it. This weekend, if your parents are up for it. Really? You don't need to think about it. What's there to think about? Your family is becoming my family. That means all of it, the good parts and the hard parts. Caleb needs to learn that too, that families aren't just about the easy stuff. They're about showing up when things are messy. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. How did I get so lucky? I ask myself the same question every day. Seriously though, 6 months ago, I was alone. I was drowning in my parents' situation and my own loneliness, and I thought that was just going to be my life forever. And then I pulled over some guy for speeding, and everything changed. Best traffic stop of my life, Ethan agreed, even if you did make that joke about the wedding ring. I'm never going to live that down, am I? Probably not, but I forgive you. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car passed on the street, its headlights briefly illuminating the yard before fading away. Maya, Ethan said eventually, his voice thoughtful. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever think about the future? Not just next week or next month, but really far ahead. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? 10? Maya considered the question. She'd spent so long just trying to survive each day that looking ahead felt almost foreign. But sitting here, with Ethan's arm around her and the quiet sounds of his house behind them, Caleb's occasional murmur in his sleep, Rex's filter bubbling in the kitchen, she could almost imagine it. I see this, she said finally. Not exactly this, but something like it. A family, a home, someone to share things with. The good and the bad, and everything in between. Do you see it with me? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Maya pulled back slightly so she could look at his face. In the dim light, his eyes were serious, searching. Yes, she said. I see it with you, with Caleb, with whatever comes next. Good. Ethan's face broke into a smile. Because I see it too. And I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Are you asking me something right now? No, not yet. But someday I might. And when I do, I wanted to know you'd be ready to answer. Maya's heart was pounding, but not with fear this time. With anticipation, with hope, with the kind of happiness she'd almost forgotten was possible. When you ask, she said, I'll be ready. Ethan pulled her close and kissed her. A slow, deep kiss that tasted like promises and tomorrows. And when they finally pulled apart, Maya realized that somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being afraid of the future. She was ready for whatever came next. The following weekend, they brought Caleb to meet her parents. Maya had spent days preparing, explaining to Caleb that her daddy was sick, that sometimes he might seem confused or say strange things, that it was okay to ask questions, but also okay to just sit and be present. Caleb had listened with the serious attention he usually reserved for dinosaur documentaries, nodding solemnly at each point. Like when Tommy's grandma couldn't remember his name, Caleb said. He said it made him sad, but also it wasn't her fault. Exactly like that. I'll be careful. I'll be nice to your daddy. And he was. He was more than nice. He was extraordinary. Within an hour of arriving, Caleb had discovered that Richard loved trains, a passion Maya had almost forgotten about, buried under years of other memories. The two of them sat together in the study, poring over Richard's old train magazines, Caleb asking endless questions about steam engines and cabooses, while Richard answered with an animation Maya hadn't seen in months. He's good with kids, Linda whispered to Maya as they watched from the doorway. Your father, he always was. Something about their energy. It reaches him. Caleb has that effect on people. He has your heart, that one. I can see it. He loves without holding back. Maya watched her father laugh at something Caleb said, watched Caleb beam with pride at having made a grown-up laugh, and felt her chest expand with something that might have been joy. He does, she agreed. He really does. They stayed for dinner, pasta that Linda made with Ethan's help, while Maya and Caleb kept Richard company in the living room. It wasn't perfect. Richard had a moment of confusion during dessert, becoming agitated when he couldn't remember who Caleb was. But Caleb handled it with a grace that amazed everyone. "That's okay, Mr. Hart," he said calmly. "I'm Caleb. I'm Maya's friend. We were just talking about trains. Do you want to tell me more about the one with the red stripe?" And just like that, Richard was back, diving into an explanation of some vintage locomotive that Caleb probably didn't understand but listened to with rapt attention anyway. Later, as they were leaving, Richard pulled Maya aside. His eyes were clear, one of those unexpected moments of lucidity that came less and less often these days. "That boy," Richard said, nodding toward where Caleb was hugging Linda goodbye. "That boy is special." "I know, Dad." "And the man, Ethan. He looks at you like you hung the moon." "Dad, I'm not going to be here forever, Maya. You know that. I know that. We all know it, even if we don't say it out loud." Richard took her hands in his, and for a moment, he was fully her father again. The man who had taught her to ride a bike, who had pinned the badge on her chest, who had always believed she could do anything. "But I need you to promise me something." "Anything. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy. Promise me you won't spend so much time taking care of everyone else that you forget to take care of yourself. Promise me that when I'm gone, you'll have people who love you, a family." Maya's eyes were blurring with tears. "I promise, Dad." "Good." Richard squeezed her hands. "Now go, take your family home, and come back soon. I like the boy with the trains." She hugged him then, hugged him tight, trying to memorize the feeling of his arms around her, knowing that there would come a day when this wouldn't be possible anymore, when he wouldn't recognize her or wouldn't be here at all. But that day was not today. Today, he knew her. Today, he'd laughed with Caleb and talked to Ethan and eaten pasta with his family. Today was a gift. And Maya was learning, slowly, to accept gifts when they were offered. The months that followed unfolded like the slow turning of seasons, each day bringing small changes that added up to something transformative. Maya found herself settling into a rhythm she had never imagined possible, one that held space for both her families, that allowed her to be a daughter and a partner and a mother figure all at once without feeling like she was being torn apart. Caleb's visits to her parents' house became a regular occurrence, something he looked forward to with genuine excitement. He and Richard had developed their own language of connection, trains and dinosaurs, and the kind of rambling conversations that didn't need to make linear sense to be meaningful. On Richard's good days, they would spend hours together, Caleb showing him pictures he'd drawn at school, while Richard shared stories about the trains he'd seen as a young man. On the harder days, when Richard was confused or agitated, Caleb would simply sit beside him, holding his hand, offering the kind of quiet presence that seemed to calm something in Richard's restless mind. "He doesn't need me to fix anything," Caleb said once, when Maya asked him how he knew what to do. "He just needs someone to be there. Like Mr. Trunk is there for me when I have bad dreams." Maya had to turn away to hide her tears. Her 8-year-old understood something that most adults struggled with their entire lives, that sometimes love wasn't about solving problems. Sometimes it was just about showing up. The support resources Ethan had found were making a difference too. Linda had started attending the weekly caregiver support group, and for the first time in years, she was connecting with people who understood what she was going through. The respite care program gave her a few hours each week to herself, time she spent gardening or reading or simply sitting in silence without the constant vigilance that had become her default state. She looked better. Not rested, exactly. Caring for someone with Alzheimer's didn't allow for true rest, but less like she was drowning. "I forgot what it felt like," Linda told Maya one afternoon as they sat together in the garden while Richard napped inside. "To have time that was just mine, to not be listening for footsteps or watching the clock. I forgot that I was a person too, not just a caregiver. You're more than a caregiver, Mom. You always have been. I know that now. But for a while there, I'd lost myself. Linda smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Your Ethan helped me find my way back. Your Ethan. The word sent a warm flutter through Maya's chest. Because he was, wasn't he? Hers. And she was his. And somehow, against all odds, they had built something real together. Spring turned to summer, and summer began its slow slide toward fall. Caleb started 4th grade with the same enthusiasm he brought to everything, chattering about his new teacher and his new classroom, and the new kid named Marcus, who also loved dinosaurs. Maya had settled into a new shift rotation that gave her more evenings at home, and she and Ethan had fallen into the comfortable rhythms of shared domesticity, cooking dinner together, helping Caleb with homework, collapsing on the couch after bedtime to watch whatever series they were currently binging. It was ordinary. It was mundane. It was the most beautiful thing Maya had ever experienced. One evening in late September, as the leaves were just beginning to turn and the air carried the first hints of autumn crispness, Ethan came home from a client meeting with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. She was in the kitchen, helping Caleb with a diorama project about ecosystems, and she looked up as Ethan walked in. Everything okay? Fine. Good, actually. Really good. He set down his laptop bag and crossed to kiss her forehead. Can we talk after Caleb goes to bed? There's something I want to discuss. Maya's heart did a little skip. She'd been waiting for this. Not consciously, but somewhere in the back of her mind, she'd been waiting. Ever since that night on the porch, when Ethan had asked if she could see a future with him, when he'd said that someday he might ask her something, she'd been waiting. Of course, she said, keeping her voice casual. Everything okay? Better than okay. But it can wait. The next 2 hours felt endless. Maya helped Caleb finish his diorama, supervised his bath, read him a chapter of the book they were working through together, and tucked him into bed with Mr. Trunk and Tricer and Rex's fishbowl glowing softly on the dresser. She kissed his forehead and told him she loved him, and Caleb yawned and said, Love you too, Miss Maya. Love you to the moon and back. It was what she said to him now, every night, a ritual they had built together. When she came back downstairs, Ethan was on the back porch, 2 glasses of wine on the table beside him. The sky was deep purple, the first stars just beginning to appear, and the air smelled like fallen leaves and coming change. Sit with me, Ethan said, patting the space beside him on the porch swing. Maya sat, accepting the wine he offered. Her hands were trembling slightly, though she wasn't sure if it was anticipation or nervousness or some combination of both. So, she said, you wanted to talk. I did. Ethan took a sip of his wine, set the glass down, and turned to face her. Maya, these past months with you have been... I don't even have the words. After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part that believed in love, in partnership, in building a future with someone. I thought I'd had my chance and I'd lost it, and that was just how things were going to be. Ethan, let me finish, please. He took her hand, holding it between both of his. When I met you, I was barely surviving. I was going through the motions, taking care of Caleb, doing my work, but I wasn't really living. And then you came along, you with your terrible jokes and your golden heart and your stubborn refusal to let anyone help you, and everything changed. Maya felt tears building behind her eyes. You changed things for me too. You and Caleb. I was so alone before, and I didn't even realize how alone I was until you showed me what it felt like to have a family. That's what I want to talk about. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya's breath caught in her throat. I know we haven't been together that long, less than a year, if you're counting, but I also know that I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're the person I want to wake up next to every morning. You are the person I want to build a life with, to raise Caleb with, to face whatever comes next with. You are my person, Maya Hart, and I want to make that official. He opened the box and Maya saw a ring, simple and elegant, a single diamond on a silver band. Not flashy, not ostentatious, just beautiful, like the life they were building together. Will you marry me? The tears were falling now, streaming down Maya's face, But she was smiling too, smiling so wide it almost hurt. "Yes," she said. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, and then they were kissing and laughing and crying all at the same time. The porch swing creaked beneath them, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked, and the stars continued their ancient wheeling overhead, indifferent to the small human miracle happening beneath them. "I have to tell Caleb," Maya said when they finally pulled apart. "He's going to lose his mind." "He already knows," Ethan admitted. "I asked him first. I told him I wanted to marry you, and I asked if that was okay with him." "What did he say?" "He said, and I quote, 'Finally, I've been waiting forever.'" Ethan laughed. "He also said he wants to be the best man. I told him we'd discuss it." Maya laughed too, joy bubbling up through her like champagne. "He can be whatever he wants to be. Ring bearer, best man, flower boy. I don't care. I just want him there. I want both of you there. I want this." "You have us," Ethan said. "For as long as you want us." Forever sounds good. Forever it is. The next morning, Caleb's reaction was everything Maya had hoped for, and more. When they told him the news at breakfast, he let out a whoop that probably woke the neighbors and launched himself at Maya with enough force to nearly knock her off her chair. "You're going to be my mom now," he shouted. "My real mom. Well, not my real mom because that's Mommy Sarah, but my other real mom, my Maya mom." Maya held him tight, feeling his small heart pounding against hers. "I'm going to be your Maya mom," she agreed, "if that's okay with you." "It's more than okay. It's the best thing ever." Caleb pulled back, his face suddenly serious. "Do you think Mommy Sarah would be happy that Daddy found you and that we're going to be a family?" Maya looked at Ethan, who was watching them with an expression of such profound love that it almost hurt to see. "I think your Mommy Sarah would be very happy," Maya said carefully. "I think she would want your daddy to have someone to love, and she would want you to have people who take care of you. She loved you both so much. She would never want you to be alone." Caleb nodded, satisfied. "That's what Daddy says too. He says Mommy Sarah is in our hearts, and she stays there forever, even when we love new people." "Your daddy is a very smart man." "I know," Caleb grinned. "He picked you, didn't he?" They told Maya's parents that weekend. Richard was having one of his better days, not perfect, but present enough to understand what they were telling him. When Maya showed him the ring, his eyes filled with tears. "My little girl," he said, taking her hand, "getting married. I always knew you'd find someone good. He is good, Dad. He's the best. I know. I can see it." Richard looked at Ethan, who was standing nearby with Caleb. "You take care of them, both of them, my daughter and that boy." "I will, sir. I promise." Richard nodded, satisfied. Then his gaze drifted, the fog beginning to roll in again, but before he disappeared entirely, he squeezed Maya's hand one more time. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Have I told you that? I'm proud of the woman you've become." "You've told me, Dad, many times." "Good. I don't want to forget to tell you. Some things are too important to forget." Linda was overjoyed by the news, immediately launching into discussions of venues and guest lists and whether Maya had thought about colors yet. Maya let her mother's excitement wash over her, understanding that this was Linda's way of coping, focusing on happy things, on the future, on the family that was growing even as her husband was fading away. "I want Dad to be there," Maya said when they had a moment alone. "At the wedding, I want him to see it." Linda's face grew serious. "You know his good days are getting rarer." "I know, but I want to try. Can we plan it soon, before—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Before he can't be there at all." Linda nodded. "We'll make it work, sweetheart. Whatever it takes." The wedding planning began in earnest, compressed into a timeline that was tighter than ideal, but necessary for the circumstances. Maya and Ethan decided on a small ceremony, just close family and a few friends, at the little chapel near her parents' house. It wasn't the grand wedding Maya had once imagined for herself, back when she was younger and didn't understand that the most important things in life were often the simplest ones. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" Ethan asked one evening, as they pored over a modest list of florists. I know it's not the dream wedding most people picture. This is better than any dream wedding, Maya said. This is real. This is us. This is everything I actually want. And it was. With each decision they made together, the flowers, the music, the simple menu for the reception, Maya felt more certain that this was exactly right. Not perfect, because nothing was perfect, but real, honest, true. 2 months later, on a clear December morning with frost on the grass and pale winter sunlight streaming through the chapel windows, Maya Hart stood in a small room at the back of the church and looked at herself in the mirror. Her dress was simple, ivory silk, knee-length, with a thin belt that caught the light. Linda had done her hair, pinning it up in a way that was elegant but still looked like her. Her makeup was minimal. The ring on her finger caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the walls. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Maya turned to find her mother in the doorway, tears already glistening in her eyes. "Don't cry, Mom. You'll make me cry, and then my makeup will be ruined." "I can't help it." Linda crossed the room and took Maya's hands. "My little girl is getting married to a wonderful man who loves her, with a little boy who adores her. How am I supposed to not cry?" "How's Dad?" "He's good. He's having a good day. He knows where he is. He knows what's happening." Linda's voice caught. "He keeps asking if it's time yet. He doesn't want to miss it." Maya felt her own tears threatening. "Then let's not keep him waiting." The ceremony was everything Maya had hoped for and things she hadn't known to hope for. The chapel was small, holding only 30 guests, but it felt full. Full of love, full of history, full of the complicated, messy, beautiful reality of two families becoming one. Richard walked her down the aisle. He was unsteady on his feet, and Maya kept her arm through his as much to support him as to be supported. But his eyes were clear and his voice was strong when the minister asked who gave this woman to be married. "Her mother and I do," Richard said. Then he leaned close to Maya and whispered, "I love you, sweetheart. I may forget many things, but I will never forget how proud I am of you today." Maya kissed his cheek, tasting salt from her own tears, and watched as Linda helped him to his seat in the front row. And then she turned to face Ethan. He was wearing a simple gray suit, and Caleb stood beside him in a matching one, looking so proud that he might burst. When Maya reached them, Caleb gave her a thumbs up that made the guests laugh softly. "Hi," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Hi yourself. You look incredible. You clean up pretty well too." The minister began the ceremony speaking about love and commitment and the courage it took to open your heart to another person. Maya heard the words, but mostly she was looking at Ethan, at the man who had stumbled into her life through a traffic stop and a terrible joke, who had let her into his heart even though he was terrified of being hurt again, who had shown up for her in every way that mattered. When it came time for the vows, Maya spoke from the heart. "Ethan, when I met you, I was lost. I was drowning in grief and fear and loneliness, and I didn't even know it. I had built walls around my heart so high that I couldn't see over them anymore. And then you came along, you and Caleb, and you showed me what it meant to be part of a family, not because you needed me to be perfect, but because you loved me exactly as I was, messy, stubborn, scared." She paused, gathering herself. "I promise to love you through the hard days and the easy ones. I promise to be your partner in everything, the joys and the sorrows, the laughter and the tears. I promise to be a mother to Caleb, to love him and guide him and show up for him every single day. And I promise to keep choosing you, both of you, for as long as I live, because you are my home, you are my family, you are everything I never knew I needed." Ethan's eyes were shining when she finished. He took both her hands in his and spoke his own vows. "Maya, when Sarah died, I thought my heart had died with her. I thought I would spend the rest of my life just surviving, never really living again. And then you pulled me over on a rainy night and made a joke that was completely inappropriate." Laughter rippled through the guests. "And something in me woke up. You didn't treat me like a tragedy. You treated me like a person, like someone worth knowing, worth loving, worth building a future with." He squeezed her hands. "I promise to love you with everything I have. I promise to be honest with you, even when it's hard. I promise to hold your hand through your father's illness and whatever other challenges life throws at us. I promise to share the weight always, so neither of us has to carry it alone. And I promise to spend every day showing you what I already know, that you are worthy of love, of happiness, of a family that will never let you go." The minister pronounced them husband and wife. And when Ethan kissed her, Maya felt something shift into place, the last piece of a puzzle she hadn't even known she was assembling. "I present to you," the minister said, "Ethan and Maya Brooks, and their son, Caleb." Caleb's face lit up at being included, and he threw his arms around both of them, turning their first kiss as a married couple into a group hug that had everyone laughing through their tears. The reception was held at her parents' house, in the living room where Maya had grown up. The medical equipment had been temporarily moved to make room for a small dance floor, and the decorations were simple but beautiful. White flowers and candles and photographs of all three families that had come together to create this new one. Richard danced with Maya, a slow waltz to the song her parents had danced to at their own wedding 38 years ago. He was unsteady, and Maya held him up as much as he held her, but his eyes never left her face. "You're happy," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm happy, Dad." "Good. That's all I ever wanted for you." He was quiet for a moment, and Maya could see the fog threatening at the edges of his consciousness. But he held on, fighting to stay present. "I may not remember this tomorrow, but today, right now, I see you, my daughter, my Maya, getting married, starting a life." "I'll remember for both of us," Maya said. "I'll remember every detail." "That's my girl." Richard smiled, and for just a moment he was completely himself, the father she remembered from childhood, the man who had taught her to be brave and strong and kind. "That's my beautiful girl." The song ended, and Linda came to take Richard's arm. He was fading now, the effort of staying present taking its toll, but he'd made it. He'd walked her down the aisle. He'd danced with her at her wedding. He'd given her a memory she would carry forever. Later, as the reception wound down and the guests began to leave, Maya found herself standing on the back porch, looking up at the stars. The same stars she'd watched with Ethan on so many nights. The same sky that had witnessed their slow, careful falling in love. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Hey, wife." "Hey, husband. How are you feeling?" "Perfect, exhausted, overwhelmed, happy." Maya leaned back against him. "All of it at once." "That sounds about right." "My dad was here." "He was really here, Ethan. He saw it. He'll probably forget by morning, but today he knew me. He walked me down the aisle. He danced with me." "I know, I saw." Ethan pressed a kiss to her temple. "It was beautiful. Thank you for making this happen so fast, for understanding why it mattered. Family matters. That's what this whole thing has taught me. Not just the family you're born into, but the family you choose, the family you build." He turned her around to face him. "We built something, Maya. You and me and Caleb, we took all our broken pieces and we made something whole. We did, didn't we? We really did." Inside the house, Caleb was helping Linda collect plates, chattering happily about the wedding and the cake and how he was definitely going to tell everyone at school that he was a best man. Richard was dozing in his chair, worn out from the day's excitement, but peaceful in his sleep. The photographs on the walls told the story of lives lived and lost and found again. Maya looked at all of it, her old family and her new one, the past and the future. The grief and the joy all tangled together, and felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. 6 months ago, she had been a woman pulling over a speeding car on a rainy night, making a joke she would immediately regret. She had been alone, exhausted, drowning in responsibilities she didn't know how to manage. She had been so focused on surviving that she had forgotten what it meant to truly live. And now here she was, married, a mother, part of something bigger than herself. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked. "I'm thinking about that traffic stop, the night we met." "The night you flirted with a widower and then felt terrible about it?" "That's the one," Maya smiled. "I was so embarrassed. I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. And now? Now I'm glad I said it. I'm glad I gave you that warning instead of a ticket. I'm glad fate, or coincidence, or whatever you want to call it, put us in that ice cream shop at the same time." "So am I." Ethan took her hand, his thumb tracing over her wedding ring. You know what I think? I think some mistakes are meant to be made, because they lead us exactly where we need to go. Maya thought about that, about all the wrong turns and missteps and moments of doubt that had brought her to this porch, this night, this life. Thus, the traffic stop, the joke, the pulling away, the coming back. Each mistake had been a step on the path that led her here. No more running, she said softly. No more running, Ethan agreed. Just this, for the rest of our lives. I can live with that. They stayed on the porch until the last guests had gone, until Caleb had been tucked into bed in Maya's old room, until the house was quiet and the night was deep and the stars blazed overhead like promises kept. And when they finally went inside, hand in hand, Maya Hart Brooks knew with absolute certainty that she had found what she'd been searching for all along. A family, a home, a love that would weather any storm, not perfect, not easy, but real. And that was more than enough.